So picture a sprawling, half-finished semiconductor plant just sitting totally silent in the Midwest.
Yeah, no activity at all.
Right. The cranes are locked, crews are completely gone. But then contrast that image with a site like maybe 300 miles away. It's a former nuclear uranium enrichment facility.
Oh, wow.
And earth movers are there right now preparing to build this $37.5 billion futuristic artificial intelligence city, literally on top of radioactive dirt.
It's a jarring contrast.
It really is. And this is the physical reality of the construction market as of today, March 24th, 2026. Private non-residential construction just fell for the fourth straight month.
Yeah, and manufacturing is down, 40% from its peak?
Exactly, 40%.
Yeah.
But at the exact same time, you've got $5 billion in critical public transit construction that is just completely frozen across two major cities because of these sweeping legal fights. So the market is splitting harder than ever.
It really is. The traditional middle market of construction is just effectively vanishing. We're watching the ground fracture in real time,
Yeah.
Everyday commercial builds are drying up, and capital is desperately consolidating into, either these unprecedented anomalies or highly volatile public works.
So welcome to today's deep dive. If you're managing a pipeline right now, or bidding on projects, directing capital, you know that understanding where the money is actually flowing.
And where it's physically getting trapped.
Right, exactly. That's the difference between keeping your doors open and closing them for good. So our mission today is to really diagnose this fracture. Let's start by looking at the illness in the private market, because we have to understand why capital is acting so strangely.
Yeah, and the latest data from the Associated Builders and Contractors, the ABC, it paints a really stark picture. Private non-residential construction spending is currently sitting at $1.245 trillion.
And that's at a seasonally adjusted annual rate, right?
Yeah,
The SOAR.
right, the SAR. And just to put that into context for you, if you take the spending from this exact moment and just extrapolate it over 12 months, smoothing out weather delays and all that, we're looking at a number that is actually down 8% from its high in December of 2023.
Which, 8% might not sound catastrophic in isolation, but it's the momentum that really stands out to me.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the fourth consecutive monthly decline. If you dig into the subsectors, 9 out of the 16 tracked non-residential sectors are dropping.
Yeah, it's widespread.
But the sector that completely falls off a cliff in this data set is manufacturing construction. Like you said, it's plummeted 40% in just 18 months.
Which is wild when you think about it.
Right, because think back to like a couple of years ago when the TPS Act was signed. Every headline was about these sweeping semiconductor plants breaking ground.
Oh yeah, the hype was unreal.
It feels like the manufacturing sector just went on this massive legislative sugar high, and now they're experiencing a severe crash.
That's a great way to put it. And the mechanics of that crash really come down to how capital is deployed over the life cycle of a build,
Right.
The initial surge of government-backed capital for those big flagship factories, that's largely been spent.
The heavy civil work is done.
Exactly. Deep foundations poured, structural steel is up, but the secondary pipeline, the ecosystem of smaller supplier facilities and regional hubs that were supposed to follow that has completely stalled out.
Because of the borrowing costs.
Yeah, high interest rates have just made the math unworkable for those secondary developers. So backlogs across the industry are sitting at a 4-year low. New project announcements are just slowing to a trickle.
And when you combine those physical realities with Moody's putting the odds of a broader recession at, 50-50?
50-50, yeah.
You have a private market that is rapidly pulling its chips off the table.
Yeah.
But there is one data point in this report that my brain is genuinely struggling to compute.
Oh, I think I know which one you're going to say.
The data centers. It shows that data center construction is only up 2%. How is that functionally possible? Every business article you read today is about the absolute explosion of the AI boom.
I know, it seems totally contradictory, but the bottleneck isn't the desire to build. The bottleneck is the physical reality of the grid.
The power grid.
Right. Building a hyperscale data center requires securing land, getting local zoning approvals, and crucially, securing unprecedented amounts of electrical power. You can't just plug a facility of that scale into the municipal grid.
Right, blow the whole system.
Exactly. And the macro spending trends between these public and private sectors, which, by the way, are actively tracked by platforms like Smart Business Automator, their data reflects this exact friction. The press releases about AI expansion are super loud, but the actual construction spend is fundamentally bottlenecked by energy availability.
Okay, so because every day private commercial builds are drying up, and even the tech builds are moving at a snail's pace, we are seeing capital flee the broad market. It's consolidating into singular, towering anomalies.
Which brings us directly to Ohio.
Yes, the situation unfolding in Ohio. So SoftBank is proposing the Port S Technology Campus in Piketon, Ohio. And this is on a former federal uranium enrichment site.
Yeah, and the scale of this proposal just defies traditional construction metrics. We are looking at a total investment exceeding $37.5 billion.
Billion, with a B.
With a B. They're planning a 10 gigawatt data center capacity. And because no existing regional grid could ever dream of supporting a 10 gigawatt draw without, causing rolling blackouts across multiple states.
They have to build their own power.
Exactly. SoftBank is pairing the data center with 9.2 gigawatts of dedicated natural gas power generation built directly on the site. They're essentially building their own private utility company just to power the servers.
To give you a sense of the sheer physical materials involved here, they're bringing in Bechtel and Kiewit as the EPC leads engineering, procurement, and construction.
Heavy hitters.
The heaviest. This project requires 170 GE Vernova gas turbines. Just the turbines alone represent a $10 billion value.
Staggering.
And they estimate a peak construction workforce of 35,000 jobs. It's all being financed through a $550 billion Japan trade deal. If this gets completed, it would be the largest single-site data center and power complex in the entire world.
Yeah, and this shows that when the broad market contracts, institutional capital seeks the largest, most secure harbor it can find. The port campus isn't just a construction project, it's practically a geopolitical energy deployment.
And here's the catch that really stops me in my tracks. Construction is supposedly slated to start in 2026.
Right.
Yet they haven't filed a single environmental permit, and no PJM interconnection application has been submitted. For those outside the energy sector, why is that PJM application so critical? Is this just vaporware?
Well, PJM Interconnection is the regional transmission organization. Think of them as like the air traffic control for the electrical grid across 13 states in the eastern U.S., which includes Ohio. Even if you build your own natural gas power plant on site, you still have to connect to the broader grid for redundancy, startup power, and stability. And the queue to get an approval from PJM currently takes years.
Years. Wow.
Yeah. And the Smart Business Automator platform actually tracks these exact megaproject pipeline announcements alongside their projected start dates. The gap between a flashy press release and shovels actually hitting the dirt is widening dramatically.
So without those permits, a 2026 start date is highly optimistic.
It's incredibly optimistic.
This forces us to follow a very specific chain of cause and effect. If you're a major contractor, the private commercial market is shrinking. The $37 billion mega projects might be tied up in PJM interconnection queues for years. So what is your next move?
Historically, you pivot. You go to the safest, most reliable work available, which is federally funded public transit infrastructure.
The safety net.
Exactly. When private capital retreats, government infrastructure spending is supposed to bridge the gap.
But the data today shows that safety net is tangled in severe legal chaos. Take Chicago. The CTA has over $2.1 billion in federal transit funding completely frozen.
It's a massive issue right now.
Their $5.7 billion red line extension is suddenly at huge risk. The Walsh-Vinci design-build team, who holds a $2.9 billion contract for this, has officially been told to demobilize by March 27th.
And look, demobilization is one of the most destructive words in the heavy civil vocabulary.
What does that actually look like on the ground?
It means breaking down the complex logistics network you just spent months building. You're pulling your heavy equipment off the site, and you're sending highly specialized labor home.
Just brutal.
Yeah, and the mechanism behind this freeze comes down to federal funding disputes. When lawsuits challenge, say, the environmental impact or the procurement process of a transit project, it can act as a sudden injunction on Federal Transit Administration grants.
So Congress allocated the money, but it physically cannot be released to the contractors. And Chicago isn't an isolated incident. Look at the East Coast. The $16 billion Gateway Hudson Tunnel project connecting New York and New Jersey is facing parallel chaos.
Yep, same story.
The shutdown there has already cost millions of dollars in idle equipment. 100 members of Local 472 have been laid off. 2 major tunnel and surface contracts are entirely delayed, and they only have 2 to 3 months of cash runway remaining.
And we are looking at an April 16th court date for the Gateway project. The Chicago dispute is also heading into the courtroom. So if you combine those, you have over $5 billion in active transit pipelines completely frozen by litigation.
Think about the mechanics of that freeze in your own life. It's like ripping the roof off your house for a major renovation, and mid-swing with the sledgehammer, your bank legally freezes the loan.
That's a perfect analogy.
You're exposed to the elements, your framing crew is just standing there holding their tools, and you have literally no idea when the money will flow again.
And the damage doesn't stop at the general contractor. It creates this devastating contagion effect down the entire supply chain.
Right, because if the prime contractor isn't getting paid,
they stop paying their subcontractors. That financial strain trickles down immediately to the regional concrete supplier, the scaffolding company, the local electricians. And this friction, this government funding and regulatory bottleneck, it's actively altering the energy landscape too.
Because it's forcing developers to abandon certain sectors entirely. Which brings us to a massive pivot by TotalEnergies.
Yes.
They just accepted a $928 million federal buyout for their offshore wind leases. That's $795 million for their New York Bight lease and $133 million for Carolina Long Bay. And here's the kicker. They have officially pledged to never pursue U.S. offshore wind projects again.
When a multinational energy giant uses the word never, the whole industry needs to pay close attention.
Yeah, that's not a word you throw around lightly.
Not at all. And the mechanism of a federal buyout is really telling here. The government essentially buys back the lease rights because the developer has determined that the math to actually build the project just no longer works.
So where is that nearly $1 billion buyout going? They're redirecting the capital straight back into fossil fuels. They're funding the Rio Grande LNG project in Texas.
Yeah.
For our listeners who don't work in oil and gas, what exactly is an LNG train? Because they're funding trains 1 through 4.
Right. So an LNG train isn't, a vehicle on tracks. It's a highly specialized, standalone industrial facility. It takes raw natural gas, purifies it, and then supercools it down to minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit until it becomes a liquid.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, liquefied natural gas. Then it can be pumped into specialized tanker ships and exported globally. So by shifting capital into trains 1 through 4 at Rio Grande, alongside new investments in Gulf oil and shale gas TotalEnergies, is making a very clear calculation about where their capital yields the most predictable return.
And this is the first completed wind-to-fossil federal buyout we've seen. If an entity with the deep pockets of TotalEnergies decides to walk away entirely, does this create a template for other major developers, like Ørsted or Equinor or BP?
It absolutely creates a template. We have to view this strictly through the lens of capital flow. Developers in offshore wind have been battered by this trifecta of economic headwinds: high interest rates, severe supply chain bottlenecks for maritime equipment, and strict domestic content requirements.
So the friction is just too high.
Exactly. When the friction to navigate those hurdles exceeds the eventual profit margin of generating electricity, capital acts rationally. It just leaves. The offshore wind pipeline loses a major developer, and the gas and LNG pipeline grows proportionally.
So let's look at the contractor on the ground facing this reality today. The private market is shrinking. The mega projects are years away from breaking ground. Public transit funds are trapped in courtrooms, and energy developers are pivoting wildly from wind back to gas.
It's a lot.
How does an everyday construction company survive this environment?
Well, the data points to a desperate pivot toward internal efficiency. When a contractor cannot control the external market, they can't control interest rates or the speed of a federal courtroom, they are forced to control their internal margins.
And we're seeing this exact phenomenon play out in breakout search trends this morning. The search data reveals an industry-wide scramble for optimization. Searches for construction safety management software have hit a new all-time high, up 550%.
Huge jump.
Searches for construction safety manual are up 60%. Modular construction searches reversed from negative to up 96.4%, which signals a strong comeback for off-site, climate-controlled building where labor costs are more predictable. But there's one statistic that eclipses everything else.
The estimating software.
Yes. Searches for residential estimating software have experienced a breakout of plus 100,700%.
That's just a staggering acceleration.
It's like watching radar signals during a naval battle. It tells us something profound about what contractors are actually doing right now. They aren't searching for estimating software because they have an abundance of work.
Right, it's the opposite.
They're searching for it because the fundamental nature of their business has shifted from building to bidding. They have to frantically run the numbers and bid on 10 times as many projects just to win a single job that keeps their crews employed.
And they have to do it without hiring additional estimators, which is where the mechanism of AI platforms really comes into play. The contractors driving these search trends are turning to tools like Smart Business Automator to just eliminate administrative bloat.
And how does that actually work on the ground?
Well, the technology isn't magic. It's highly applied natural language processing. The platform can ingest a 1,000-page PDF specification document, extract the exact material requirements, and track budget variances in real time.
Which fundamentally changes the capacity of a product manager. Because if you're managing a site today, your company probably can't afford to hire a project engineer to assist you.
Right, you're asked to handle 3 jobs instead of 1.
Exactly. So having an AI tool that can draft request for information RFI responses based on historical data or automatically generate daily log summaries, that becomes the only way you get to go home to your family at night.
Yeah, and it goes deeper than just reading documents. The true survival mechanism here is integration. By connecting via APIs, application programming interfaces, directly into a contractor's existing enterprise resource planning software, like Procore or CMI.
It cuts out the busy work.
Yes. These platforms eliminate the manual double entry of data that traditionally causes costly human errors. Smart Business Automator tracks these software integration patterns closely, and the undeniable signal today is that ruthless internal efficiency is the only shield against a contracting external market.
But while contractors optimize internally to survive this bidding war, there is an external clock ticking that could dictate the survival of the broader industry. We're talking about the physical infrastructure we all rely on every day.
Yeah, the macro view.
We just saw a glaring reminder of this with the ruptured sewage pipe in Washington, D.C. The emergency fix was successful, but it was essentially slapping a Band-Aid on infrastructure that was installed in the 1960s.
And the underlying decay of domestic infrastructure requires hundreds of billions in sustained investment. But while the U.S. is applying Band-Aids and, frankly, fighting in courtrooms, the global market is accelerating.
China is rapidly expanding its non-fossil energy projects, right?
Pushing wind, nuclear, and solar deployment at breakneck speed. The UK is steadily implementing its net zero standard, but domestically, we have a very hard deadline approaching.
The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA, officially expires on September 30th.
And this is where all these threads tie together. The reauthorization debate for the IIJA is intensifying right now in Washington. Lawmakers are looking at the transit funding freezes we discussed earlier, the CTA in Chicago, and the Gateway Project, and it's making the debate incredibly contentious.
Because politicians are looking at billions of dollars currently trapped in litigation and asking, well, why should we authorize new funding if the existing allocations can't even make it to the job site?
Exactly.
So with the IIJA expiring in September and billions trapped by injunctions, are we about to hit an infrastructure funding cliff?
It is a severe risk. If that legislation expires without a clear, long-term reauthorization, the public works safety net that contractors are desperately relying on, it'll vanish at the exact moment the private market is hitting its lowest point.
Wow.
So to synthesize all the intelligence streams we've analyzed today, the private sector is cooling off rapidly. That makes public works and anomalies like the Ohio megaproject the main game in town. But that game is highly volatile, dependent on complex grid approvals, and tangled in legal disputes.
Which leaves you with this final thought. The tools we use to build are advancing at lightning speed. We have contractors using AI platforms like Smart Business Automator to optimize every single minute of their day and squeeze profit out of razor-thin margins. But the regulatory and funding mechanisms that actually greenlight these projects are moving backwards into gridlock. So what happens to the construction industry when it achieves perfect AI-driven efficiency inside the job trailer, but the political pipelines required to actually put shovels in the ground outside the trailer are completely frozen?
It creates a structural tension that is going to define the next decade of building. I mean, efficiency can only take you so far if the permits don't clear.
Keep that tension in mind as you review your own project pipelines this week, especially as we inch closer to that September IIJA deadline. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Like, share, comment, and subscribe from whatever platform you are listening on. Take a hard look at where your capital is deployed, stay agile, and we will see you next time.